probably we can get started. So my name is Kanejiya. I'm the founder and CEO of Cogni. Cogni is an educational technology startup. This conference is an ideal place for us to share our innovation. So when I was doing my master's and PhD research in speech recognition, I would aspire to be part of such an event. There's a lot of developer talks, there's a lot of business discussions, and there's also startup expositions and recruiting event later today. So during my master's research, I used to work on speech recognition technology and how to improve it under extremely noisy environments. I liked it so much that I decided to do my doctoral research on improving the speech recognition accuracy for the large vocabulary system by using adaptive statistical language models that can follow the semantic context of a speaker and anticipate what word they're likely to say next. And then in those days, the speech recognition industry was very resource intensive, so you needed a lot of computational resources to experiment. So I came across educational assessment problem, which shares very many similar kind of characteristics to the speech recognition problem in terms of having the need to do the semantic modeling of the students' responses and stuff like that. So I worked in that space for some time, and then I did my postdoc research on spoken language translation, how to do automatic spoken language translation from Spanish to English and vice versa. And then more recently, I used to work for companies like Nuance and Blingo, developing virtual assistant technologies for the smartphone industry, like Samsung Galaxy devices. And at that time, I was thinking these virtual assistants like Siri or Alexa are great for information retrieval. Like you have a query, it can give you some answer, but they are not ideally suitable for learning or educational purposes. And so I decided to start Cogni, which is focused on educational interactions. So basically, virtual learning assistant is similar in many aspects to a general purpose virtual assistant, but focused heavily on the education setting. And I'll explain a little bit more in detail, but let me give you a context on the AI technology and its role in education. So when you talk about AI, you hear many different terminologies and technologies like neural networks, voice recognition, NLP, and also other related fields. And many experts believe that AI is going to play a very big role in education space, and in fact, the opportunity are immense. The expected growth rate is around 43%. So what specific areas within education, artificial intelligence and voice technologies can help? So it can help us in administrative or academic settings. For example, getting students enrolled into an institution, helping them select a particular course, or keeping them into the system and helping them graduate, and preparing them for the job, etc. Or on the other side, academic side, you can help them learn something better by giving them tutoring or providing them assessment supports, also designing the instructional content, etc. So within that context, if you want to improve the quality of education, we need to address the problem of the pedagogy. And the most original pedagogy that people have known is the conversation. From the beginning of the civilization up until now, knowledge has always passed from the possessor to the receiver through the modality of conversation. But many of the modern edtech products have not been using this pedagogy because of the lack of technologies like natural language processing. And so the ideal form of education that all the experts believe is in terms of the personalized, adaptive, individualized, and engaging. But the reality is that you have a classroom where there are 30 students and one professor, so they can't attend to each and every student's need. And many of us have taken introductory level college courses, which are in the large lecture halls. There are probably around 300 students, and that makes it even more difficult. And nowadays, students learn in online environments called massive open online courses, where there's no limit on how many students can enroll in a course. And so all of these situations make it very difficult to provide personalized, adaptive, individualized, and engaging education. And so experts do believe that assessment and feedback is the most important challenge that in order to make the online education successful. So when people design educational system, they create a platform, they put learning content, which are very easy to offer, but they sometimes forget about the assessment and feedback as an important part of the system. And that's the reason because natural language processing technologies and the voice kind of understanding technologies were not available. So in order to make the conversation as an important pedagogy being available today, what are the components of this pedagogy? So first pedagogy is the one-to-one tutoring or instruction. It has been proven that students who receive one-to-one learning environment perform 2 standard deviations better than students who learn in a classroom setting. Also, the other pedagogical component is asking students to explain things in an open response questions format rather than multiple choice format, because there are many benefits. It allows us to see if a student really understands the concepts and is able to articulate that knowledge. But these are excellent pedagogies, also very expensive to implement. For example, if you have a classroom of 30 students and you want to ask them open response questions, then let's say you ask 3 questions per day to a classroom of 30 students. And at the end of the week, a teacher would have to spend around 21 hours on just grading those answers. And the cost is around $900 per week. So, the cost for tutoring is even more expensive because it takes more time. So the pedagogies are excellent, but they are very expensive. In fact, the opportunity is even bigger. For example, overall, the number of open response or natural language conversations that could take place in an education setting around the world is around 2 trillion, which happens to be slightly more than the number of social media status updates, which was part of the previous talk over here. And the challenge is that a lot of conversations and responses are being generated in education settings, but very few receive human attention, for example, grading or feedback, as a result of which the learning is not taking place in an optimal setting. So generally, you would see a lot of reliance on simpler forms of assessments, like multiple choice questions instead of open response questions, as the scale of the education increases. So in order to make education very scalable with the help of technologies like voice, we need to improve the bar. For example, offer high quality assessment, even at a large scale of deployment of learning. And also, we need to reduce the cost. For example, can we reduce the cost by orders of magnitude from dollars to cents in terms of the amount of effort required to grade these answers and process these conversations, and the time also, and improve the learning quality by significant amount, not just a marginal improvement on what is currently possible. So we believe that that is possible with the help of technologies like conversational technology. And so instead of relying on the general purpose virtual assistant technologies, if we can combine the conversational pedagogy with the conversational technology, we can create what we call as a conversational edtech. So that's what we have been working on. We call it Cogni Virtual Learning Assistant. It focuses on education. So here is an example. Typically, in case of a Siri or Alexa user asks a question, it comes back with an information. In case of a Cogni would ask a question to a student to explain, for example, in this case, what are the structures of a typical neuron? And the student would have to answer it either by speaking it or typing it. And then the system will immediately provide an assessment, feedback, and guidance if their answer is inaccurate to help them complete the topic. So it offers this tutoring support. It also grades the answers automatically and instantly, and generates analytics about what students are learning, where their misunderstandings are, which is very helpful to the faculty members in terms of improving the quality of the classroom. So here are a few examples. A student is learning science, how the wind and water effect creates the breeze. And as they progress through the conversation, if they have misunderstanding, Cogni would guide them towards completing the answer. This is another example in the domain of civic education. So the question is, what are the 4 different ways a citizen can participate in government? So first-time student responds that every citizen can vote, and instantly Cogni would score it and say, you got 25% of the answer correct. That is a good start. In what additional ways can a citizen participate in the government? So with the help of that feedback, a student is able to come with a better answer, and every time they improve. This example is in the medical training or higher education and corporate training, where a student in medical school is being tutored and trained with the help of Cogni. So they are presented with a case, and then they're asked what is the cause of a particular disease. And if they answer it correctly, then it will say, okay, we perform this procedure, and then what is the next step in the management, and when, which medicine you should prescribe, etc. So behind the scene, Cogni uses technologies like natural language processing that can analyze the student responses through syntax, semantics, and conceptual analysis to create this kind of a personalized and adaptive learning environment. It's very accurate in terms of grading the student responses. We have found that it's 96% close to inter-rate reliability measure. And every time student generates a response, Cogni would extract the semantic concepts present in the responses and tell to the faculty member that, hey, this is the concept where your students are struggling, and so they can personalize the instruction. So Cogni works across the subject areas, whether it is language learning or social sciences or humanities. Wherever there is a need for conversational, spoken, or written type kind of responses required, Cogni Virtual Learning Assistant is there to help the students and the faculty members. So we particularly work with universities and school districts, but we also partner with other edtech and corporate training providers. So how exactly do we implement a virtual learning assistant? Let's say you have a course or a content area and you would like to create an experience for your students or your target audience. So the first thing you would do is specify the learning content in a particular format. For example, you would say, here are my topics, here is a question, here is a correct answer, and then the Cogni would ingest that content and create these virtual experiences. Generally, there are different ways to use Cogni. We integrate it with other learning management systems or also as a standalone product. So this is one case study that we did with the University of Massachusetts, Boston. So Professor Brian Wyatt teaches an Introduction to Biology 101 course. It is enrolled by 600 students and is being taught in 2 sections of 300 each. So typically, he used to teach it in a normal fashion where he would take lectures in the classroom and students would learn, but then he used a different modality called flipped learning or blended learning, where he created videos, students watch the videos, and then they come to the classroom and discuss the topic and misunderstanding. The one problem that was there was that some students were skipping watching the video because there was no pressure. Then they integrated Cogni along with the videos, and that asked students questions, they had to answer it, and so that increased the amount of video watching and also the learning scores that the students got. Students especially liked the Cogni's feedback, so whenever they had a problem, they would get a feedback and guidance on how to improve their answers. And likewise, the professors and the teachers who have used our product, they also felt that it solves a very big pain point that they have. So basically, the goal of a virtual learning assistant or natural language processing technology in education is to provide value to all the stakeholders in the education ecosystem. For example, for the students, we should improve their learning outcomes. They want to get a better job, they should have better knowledge, and the system should be able to provide that guidance. For the faculty members, it should improve their productivity and give them insights on how their students are doing. And for the colleges and universities, it should allow them to scale high-quality education without compromising on the quality. So based on our research and innovation, we have won a number of awards, such as Most Innovative EdTech Product of the Year, as well as recognitions by many media analysis. So basically, conversation is part of the education, and we want to embrace it into our product, but also we have put it into our logo. So if you look at Cogni, it's basically a conversation between a machine and a human, as if it's very close to inter-human conversation. So that is virtual learning assistance for education. Thank you. If you have any questions, very happy to answer.
So you're showing 25% match, 50% match. So for example, if you ask me something, my way of answering it and other person's way of answering it would be different word usage.
Right.
So how do you cope with that? How do you determine, like, is this 50% match, this is 60% of this 100? So you need to parameters, right?
Absolutely, yeah, I think that's a great question. So when a teacher specifies a topic, they would say, here's the question, and here's a model expected correct answer. And then our natural language processing technology generalizes it to represent it in many different ways, using many different words and symbols. And so that would allow us to then recognize your answer, which is different from your friend's answer or the teacher's answer. But so far as the meaning of what you wrote is the same, it would give you credit for your answer.
What is the goal, I guess, for certain subjects? For example, like some subjects just have an easier way to get the right answer, to evaluate an answer, but maybe something like English, literature. How are you looking at that?
Yeah, that's also a good question. So generally, virtual learning assistants are very useful in subjects which are more factual-oriented knowledge rather than very open-ended kind of longer thesis writing activities. And so our focus has been mostly on language learning or sciences or humanities. Within the language learning also, you could use it in a shorter format, shorter essay format. So for example, you can present a passage to a student and ask them to summarize what are the key points in that passage that they have read, which is very helpful to them in order to formulate a longer piece of writing.
So in terms of the learning process, there's a lot of applications. Is it at the point yet where this technology can be used to assess students reliably and depend on those answers? Is the classification of the system to actually give reliable answers whether the student got the right answer for assessment purposes?
Exactly. So it has a dual purpose. So one is to help students learn by giving them feedback and tutoring. But the other purpose is that every time they write something, it assesses, it grades it, it generates a numerical score on the accuracy of their answer, right? So that information, some of the professors use to give like 5% weightage of the overall course activities. And so in that extent, it goes towards the summative assessment, which is more frequently used in the school systems. Right, thank you, everybody.